I am on page 23 of the textbook. We are still talking about author's point of view. So let's read this passage and then we will break it down. You might spend the first day on a new job filling out paperwork for your taxes. Keep this helpful information in mind as you complete those forms. One of the first things you'll be asked to do is to fill out tax forms and make decisions about tax withholding. This is one of the toughest decisions for employees. It affects your take-home pay and determines whether or not you will owe taxes next April. On the forms, you have the option to claim between 0 and 4 allowances. Allowances are calculated based on factors such as whether you are married and how many dependents you have. Dependents are people who depend on your income for at least half of their food, shelter, and clothing. They can be a spouse, a child, or an adult relative that lives with you. This does not include your friends, pets, or credit card companies. If you're single, you'll likely choose either 0 or 1 allowance. Yes, you can claim yourself as a dependent. If you choose 1 allowance, less money will be withheld from your paycheck for taxes. Your take-home pay will be higher. But since the government is not taking the money out of your paycheck, you might not receive a tax refund for the year. You might even owe money in April, so you would need to have some cash available. Your take-home pay will probably be lower if you claim 0 allowances. More money will be withheld for taxes. This increases your chances of receiving a tax refund for the year. It is always nicer to receive a refund than to owe money. Okay, this passage has 4 paragraphs. And I would actually argue that the first section is not a paragraph. A paragraph needs at least 3 sentences, in my experience. That's what my professors have always required. But let's break this down. This is a lot of information. This is not going to be just a quick, easy little diagram. But I have a structure in mind, and you certainly don't have to use this structure, but it's one that would work if you wanted to. I'm going to make a space here for my main idea, and then I'm going to make a space for each one of those bigger paragraphs. Now, that last paragraph is not very big, but it does have 3 sentences, so I would count it as a paragraph, the minimum paragraph. So I'm going to use this structure to complete my thinking process. Now, my main idea is right here. It's not really specifically stated in verbatim or word for word. It's not stated verbatim, word for word. I'm going to paraphrase. Paraphrasing is something that you learn to do as you become a stronger reader. This takes some practice, so don't be frustrated with yourself if you don't do it just right the first time. This takes lots and lots of experience, but it's something we're ready to start doing here. So what this is telling me, let me just read this little snippet again. You might spend the first day on a new job filling out paperwork for your taxes. Keep this helpful information in mind as you complete those forms. And by this helpful information, they're talking about this information down here. They are telling me that filling out tax forms on a new job can affect the money you have available and let's say I don't know how to spell the word available. What is another way of saying available? Could I say on hand through the year? That's a very good little strategy as you begin to write essays. Now we can spell the word available. I know that. But if you didn't know how to spell it, you can always substitute a synonym. Filling out tax forms on a new job can affect the money you have on hand through the year. Now that's not the best statement of the main idea, but it's enough to help me understand it. Remember, this process is just for my thinking. It's just for my comprehension. Okay, so it talks about, in the next paragraph, tax withholding. And it says that this is one of the toughest decisions for employees. It affects your take-home pay and determines whether or not you will owe taxes in April. You have the option to claim between 0 and 4 allowances. And then it goes on to tell us what a dependent is. So it defines the word dependent. Okay, so let's break that information down. These forms that you fill out are about tax withholding. And I can never remember if that has 2 H's or 1, and it does. It has 2. It is a compound word, withholding. It affects your take-home pay. And remember, I am just making notes for myself. I'm going to abbreviate. It also affects your tax refund, whether or not you get a tax refund. Doesn't affect how much tax you owe. It just affects when this tax is pulled out of your income. You have the option to claim none or up to 4 allowances. So if there are 4 dependents, including yourself, in your household, you can claim up to 4. And then it defines dependents. Because to the IRS, the tax service, this is very important. What is the legal definition of a dependent? This dependents, that means that you, the wage earner, you provide at least half of their support. My mother is disabled. She lives with me. I support her, so I can claim her as a dependent because I provide over half of her support. So these are the big pieces of information that I saw in that first paragraph. Let's look at the second major paragraph. I guess this is technically the third one. If you're single, you'll likely choose either 0 or 1 allowance. You can claim yourself as a dependent. If you choose to do that, though, less money will be withheld from your paycheck, which means your take-home pay will be higher. But you may not receive a tax refund, or you might even owe money in April. So let's take a look at this option. Let's suppose that I decide to claim myself as a dependent, a couple of things happen. First thing, let's look back here. Less money is withheld from your paycheck. So every time you get a paycheck, they will hold out less of your money, which means your take-home pay is higher. Because the government is saying, okay, you're claiming one dependent, one allowance, so you need your money to take care of that one dependent. That's great. Your take-home pay is higher. However, because the government is not holding out as much money, you may not get a tax refund. In April when we file our taxes, or you may owe money. Because if the government didn't hold out enough money, then you're going to owe that in April. So if you decide to claim yourself, you need to be aware of those two pieces of information. Okay, so what if you decide not to claim yourself? Okay, if you don't claim yourself, let me get a different color here. Your take-home pay will be lower if you claim no allowances. That is because more money is withheld for taxes. This increases your chances of receiving a tax refund. So let's take a look here. If you don't claim yourself, and I know this is not grammatically correct, but I am just making notes. Here are the two things, the two effects of that if you decide not to claim yourself. You will have more money withheld. Which means that your take-home pay is going to do what? It's going to be lower. But on the other side, you will increase your chances of a refund in April. So you, as the employee, remember this is a decision that you have to make. You decide if you would rather have more money every paycheck, which would be this situation, or if you would rather have a tax refund in April, which is this situation. So how you fill out those forms can affect the amount of money you have on hand through the year. And that is the gist, the main idea, the main point of this nonfiction passage. And I'm going to try to copy my diagram. I'm not sure how that's going to work. Let me see if I can paste it right here. So let's see. Let me crop this if it will allow me to. It will not. Bear with me, please. It's been a while since I have recorded. Let's do it this way. Let me try to take a screenshot of this picture. There we go. That's what I wanted to do. I have not recorded on this particular course in a while, and I've sort of forgotten what I'm doing. So, okay, let's pull this up here, because remember, the point of going through all that is so that we can answer questions. The questions test your comprehension of the story. So if you've truly done a good job with this diagram, these questions should be a little bit easier to answer. So here is number 1. This is at the bottom of page 23. Which of these best describes the author's purpose? Why did the author write this passage? To show how hard it is to fill out tax forms, to convince readers to claim zero allowances, to explain what happens when you take a new job, or to help readers understand tax withholding. Well, let's think about this. Does the author say it's hard to fill out these forms? He didn't. He said this is a tough decision, but filling out the forms is not the hard part. It's deciding what you want the forms to say. Is he trying to convince you to claim zero allowances? Is he trying to make you do this option? No, because he gave you this option. The author's not trying to make you decide one way or the other. To explain what happens when you take a new job. Well, this is part of what happens when you take a new job, but think of all the other things that happen when you take a new job. The author's purpose is to help you understand about tax withholding. That is really the topic, we could even say, of this passage. It's not the main idea, but we could definitely call it the topic of this passage. Which number of allowances would the author probably choose if he or she were single? Now, I'm going to look back on this one. I want to, it says, if you're single, you'll likely choose either 0 or 1 allowance. So the author talks about either one of these. And I'll tell you what, before I answer this question, I'm going to look at their answer, because if 0 or 1 were the only choice, I would pick the one of those. It's not 2 or 4 because it's just one person. But I really don't know. I'll just be honest with you. I don't know what they're trying to get me to see here. So I'm going to take a look at my answer key. I'm going to cheat, in other words. Oh, okay. I see what they're saying. This is a tough question, in my opinion. Here's the explanation. The author points out that someone who claims 1 allowance may owe money in taxes. So if you claim 1 allowance, you may owe money. If you claim 0 allowances, you may get a refund. And I think I understand. It's the last sentence of this story that I'm missing. And if you notice, it's the last sentence that I didn't highlight. I sort of just skipped over that part. It is always nicer to receive a refund than to owe money. So what is the author saying? It is nicer to get a refund. So therefore, I would claim 0 allowances. Number 3 has 2 parts. Which statement best expresses this author's point of view? Money isn't everything. Having money gives you power. Never change your job. Or planning is the key to good money management. Well, this author is trying to tell me that I need to think ahead When I'm filling out those forms, I need to understand the effect that will have on my income. Which sentence from the passage supports your answer in Part A? In other words, we chose this answer. Why? Why did I choose D? Dependents are people who depend on your income for at least half of their food, shelter, and clothing. If you're single, you'll likely choose either 0 or 1 allowance. Yes, you can claim yourself as a dependent. You might even owe money in April, so you would need to have some cash available. There it is. If you don't plan ahead, you might find yourself owing money without cash available. So you want to plan your money management strategy, and you want to support that decision with information from this passage. This would not be the easiest passage, in my opinion. This one takes some really critical thinking, especially question 2. I totally see what they're getting at now. But when I first read that, I was thinking it could be 1 or 0. So you have to really dig into what the author is saying. And I was able to look at the answer key that I have, but not everyone is going to have that advantage. So we need to figure out why the answer is what it is. Okay, in the next passage, we will look at another different type of thing, but it's the same skill. It's not an easy passage, so I'll see you in the next video for that one.